Hello, welcome to my channel. I am Jesse, my author. What you see on my book is Jesse Nashe Boanali. That's my full name. My surname is Boanali. Pretty easy to say if you just break it into segments. This is a writing channel. On this channel, I am going to discuss the art of writing and everything surrounding it. I am passionate about books. I like to read and I like to write. So I have written a full-length novel, Chain and Bone, Part 1. It is part of got some stuff on here. It's part of a three-part series. And I'll get into what it's about. But I just want to talk about my goals for this channel and what you can expect. So like I said, it's a writing channel. And I'm going to be discussing my writing process and updating people on the book I'm currently writing, which is part 2 of this series, as well as giving my thoughts on other books that I'm reading. I like classic literature. I might also talk about more contemporary writing as well, depending on what picks my fancy. But yeah, just expect writing content, everything about writing. For this particular video, I wanted to talk about how I wrote my first novel, which is Chain and Bone Part 1. The link is in the description if you want to check it out. But maybe as you hear me talk about it, you become intrigued. So I want to first read the back for you, just to give you a general sense of what's going on, and then I'll go into detail. A mournful wind carries the stench of death. Port Verde lies in ruin, overrun by the undead. This is what Cormier Bones finds upon his return to the seaside village. But it's what he doesn't find that haunts him. Lila Belmond, his betrothed, has been taken. Stolen by the infamous pirate Dord Moreau, she vanishes into waters infested by monsters and worse things still. With his crew at his side and his heart shadowed by vengeance, Cormier will sail into the depths of nightmares to find her, no matter the cost. So, it is a classic tale about love and rescuing a woman that you love from a very evil antagonist. I'm not reinventing the wheel with the plot. I just wanted to give my character a simple, easy to follow mission. So just to tell you the story of the development of this book, this has been maybe 2-3 years in the making. I can't remember when the very first draft was written, but this might have been 2 or 3 years ago. And I don't plan. So we're going to go into my process as a writer, since this is about how I wrote this book. I'm not good with planning. I've tried it. I've tried different methods. I've actually downloaded a different software to try and help with planning. And the way my brain works, it's difficult for me to be dealing with all these different elements all at once, trying to create some grand plan of a story. I overthink things and I get overwhelmed by the details. It's better for me to just write and figure it out. I don't know why this thing is... Sorry, there were technical difficulties. But yeah, like I was saying, it's better for me to just write and figure it out through a process of iteration. What that actually looks like is I'll write a draft, just whatever comes to mind off the top of my head, I'll be writing, and that'll go on for however many pages until I eventually burn out and decide to end the draft there. So I don't really complete it. I just end it wherever I had the lost idea before I got tired and fed up with the narrative. and I take what works from that first draft, and then I start a new draft with new ideas, and I take those old ideas which worked and I interpolate it into this new draft. And then that runs its course, and I move on to the third draft, and so on and so forth. And that way, through that process, certain characters will emerge with certain backgrounds, certain plot details will emerge. So I know, okay, from the first draft, there were these characters that I liked. In the second draft, I liked this location. In the third draft, I liked this plot thread, so on and so forth. And through this process of iteration, I construct a narrative. So it's almost like a Frankenstein kind of operation where you're taking bits and pieces of each of these drafts, putting them together to make a whole narrative. Interestingly, what happened with my story is that I landed on a draft. I am not sure which number this was. Could have been number 4, could have been number 5. But as I was writing it for the first time in my life, because I've always wanted to be an author. I've always wanted to write a full length narrative, a novel. It was just difficult since I was a child. Since I was like maybe 6 years old, I wanted to do this. And I've had many attempts at this and failed each time. If you're a writer, you know what it's like. You start a project, you're enthusiastic, but it gets difficult. You get confused. You don't know how to put everything together. And eventually you just give up on the project. You move on. You move on to another story. So I had many of those, many failed narrative projects. As I was writing this particular draft, I could feel that this was the one that, okay, I'm going to finish this. I'm going to write the end. My book doesn't actually have the words "the end" at the end of the narrative, but I could feel that, okay, I'm going to reach the end point. It's going to be completed. And I reached the end point, and I thought I was done. I was like, okay, it's time to edit now. It's just time to edit it, and then I'm going to have this novel. I'm going to publish it, and I'll be done. I'll move on to the next story. I began the editing process, and as I was editing it, I just realized that there was a lot wrong. There was a lot missing. The prose wasn't refined. Like, it just needed a lot of work, not just from a prose perspective or a grammar perspective, but even a narrative perspective. There was a lot of work that needed to be done. One big thing I noticed is that a lot of the characters were very boring or not very developed, which was very alarming because I was like, okay, this is not going to be a good story then if the characters aren't good. So I realized that I was far from finished. I thought this was just going to be a quick editing job and then I'll be done and I can publish. Nope. I had to rework a lot of things. I had to straight up rewrite entire chapters because it was so bad. And through that process of editing and rewriting, it started getting longer and longer and longer because details were missing. Like, certain characters and locations and scenes needed to be fleshed out. And I started to realize that the first segment of the book that I was working on and rewriting was becoming very long. It was turning into its own novel. And then that's when it clicked for me that, oh, this is going to turn into a series. I'm going to break this book into 3 parts and develop each part into its own novel. So the first segment had so much work done on it, had so much development, that it became longer than the entire book that it was pulled from. So that became this. The first draft from which this was extracted was just upwards of 100,000 words. I believe this one's like 115,000 words or something like that. I'm not sure. 588 pages. And I was much happier with this finished product than I was with the draft that it came from. A lot of work went into refining, went into developing, just making this a complete story experience. But that process was not in vain. Like, that original draft was still very valuable because it gave me a story roadmap. I know where everything's going now. I have the basic details of what is going to happen, the major characters, the major plot points. What I need to do now is, with part 2, I'm fleshing it out, expanding it. If part 2 can be viewed as the middle segment of the original draft, and it's like this, what I'm going to do is take part 2 from the original draft and just do this. Just expand it, make it more comprehensive, give it more depth, add characters, add locations, add specific moments, so that it reads like a full story, a complete novel. And then I'm going to do the same with part 3. And then what was initially meant to be one novel will become a complete 3-part series. Another point to, and maybe I'll make another dedicated video to this, I don't know. But as an independent author, I don't have editors, like professional editors that I'm paying to edit my own work. So I work by myself. And I do use AI as a tool to give feedback and edit my novel. It does not write my novel, and this is important to point out, but it does help with editing. It does what a human editor, parts of what a human editor would do. It is limited in some ways, but it gives feedback and it helps with grammar and can help tighten prose and stuff like that. But I'm still doing the labor of writing everything, and I still can decide which part of its advice to use and not use and all that sort of stuff. We do live in a climate where people are very suspicious of AI, and there's this mentality of, if AI is involved in any shape or form in any project, then it invalidates that project. So I do think it's important just to be transparent of the fact that AI did help in this case, but not in any sense that takes away from what I did. I definitely wrote this and did a lot of work by myself. In fact, people are ignorant of the writing process, especially when it comes to traditionally published authors. You'll find that these authors work with multiple editors, 4 or 5, sometimes 6, or even more editors who handle different parts of the process. So some editors might be focused exclusively on grammar, while others help with story details, while others help with pacing, so on and so forth. And you got all these different people working on your book. And sometimes it gets to a point where the lines get blurred as to whether or not this person was an editor or a co-author. But that doesn't get talked about. There is a there's just this assumption that some people might fall into. They hear the word AI and they just immediately think the entire process was automated. So I just wanted to get that out of the way and say that it gave feedback. And I'll give you an example. So something happens at the beginning of a chapter. The character says that they are allergic to something, right? At the beginning of the chapter, your character says they're allergic to a particular thing. Then at some point later in the chapter, the character is eating the thing that they said that they're allergic to. AI can point out that inconsistency and say, you wrote this, but then something else happened that contradicts what you wrote earlier on. So you might want to change that so that there's more consistency. Otherwise, it'll break immersion for the reader. So it'll point out mistakes like that and other flaws that might be in your writing, and then it's up to you to fix it. It might suggest words or sentence restructuring that can help tighten your prose. Instead of using this word, maybe use this word. This word is kind of anachronistic for the time you're in, so maybe use this one instead, so on and so forth. And what I noticed, because AI is working 24/7, always available, and gives you feedback instantly, you don't have to wait that long. You can iterate on its advice very rapidly. So you're learning and applying what you've been taught at a very rapid rate. So you improve at a very rapid rate as a writer. So its feedback was gradually becoming redundant or very minuscule, very aesthetic in nature, because I was automatically, preemptively applying a lot of the advice it was giving me initially, so that it wasn't giving me those same notes anymore, because I'd already tightened those areas. So towards the end of my book, when I was writing the final version of this version of the story, part 1, I was just kind of doing everything myself, because a lot of the advice I was getting from AI wasn't necessary anymore. My instincts had become very sharp and fine-tuned to the process, so I could pick up on a lot of those things. And as I'm writing part 2, I'm kind of debating, because right now I'm not asking AI for feedback, but I'm kind of debating whether I should do that anyway. Because, it's always nice to get a second perspective on your work, but it just doesn't feel necessary. I feel like my instincts have grown and have become very sharp. I'm reading a lot. I'm reading other authors' work and kind of applying what I learned into my own story. It is very possible for a writer to write without editors. It's become very normal to hear that writers have editors, so people just assume that that's an essential part of the process. But there have been very good novels that have been written by authors who are working entirely on their own. So yeah, I'm just kind of debating on whether I want to go that route or not. We'll see. But I'll always be honest about that. I don't think it's anything to hide. I don't think I'm doing anything wrong. But you do have people that have this very anti-AI mentality, which I just think is not very helpful, because this is the future. It's the same thing as people who are against the internet. These are all tools. Whether it's a spell checker, whether it's Grammarly, whether it's autocorrect, all that sort of stuff, they're all tools. AI is also a great research tool. It's amazing for doing research. I'm writing a pirate novel set in what is supposed to be the 18th century. I say supposed to be because my world is entirely fictional. So you're not going to see familiar countries like Spain or France. You're not going to hear about the British Empire or anything. Everything is completely new, made up, while still retaining elements of the real world for the sake of just that familiarity when as it pertains to that period in history and the new world, which would have been around the Caribbean and all that sort of stuff within that time period and the golden age of piracy. But yes, because my story is set in that period of time, I do research as to what were ships like, what were the different ships, the different types of ships. What was life like in certain settlements? What would you expect to find in a island town, an island village? What would the guns have been working like? What would the swords have been like? How would they have spoken? Which words would have been anachronistic during that time? Their clothing, what did their clothing look like? What is it made of? What fabrics? What type of fish would you expect to find in this region of the world? So on. You can go really, really deep. How did the cannons work? How many cannons did this type of ship have? You can get really deep into the details. And AI is great because it gives you direct answers and it gives you references so that you can go to specific websites and read and all these sort of things. And it saves you time because if you're using Google, you would have to you type a question, right? And then you'd be given, I don't know, 10, 20 results on one page, and you have to sift through all those pages to try and find what you're looking for. And if not, you have to go to you sift through all those links, and if not, you have to go through the next page of links to see if the information you're looking for is there, depending on how specific the information you're looking for is. Because not everything just pops up on the first link. So AI is great because it works with very specific questions. You can get the answer for anything really that you're looking for. So it's an amazing research tool. So yes, just full transparency, I also used AI to generate this particular skull and crossbones image. I gave it a prompt, give me a skull and crossbones with chains going around it. I can't remember my exact prompt. And then I obviously added the black background and the text and all these sort of things. I can't remember what font this is, but I think I used Canva to write this. And then yeah, and this is great because it's minimalistic. And for the next novel, for part 2, I'm just going to change the color. I'm going to keep this design, this skull and crossbones. I'm just going to change the color. And then that'll be part 2, and then part 3 will be a different color as well. So yeah, just full transparency. This is how, as an independent author, I am able to write a novel from start to finish without including a professional editor, paying a professional editor. And it's been very helpful, and I've learned so much, and I've improved a lot, as I said, because AI is working 24/7 and answers you instantly. It allows you to practice at a faster, more iterative rate, and your skills develop much faster as a result, which is why the writers that turn their nose at these tools, you just fall behind. If you're not willing to get with the times, these tools are meant to make us better so that we can upgrade. They're not meant to be crutches. It's not supposed to be the case that you can't write without AI. Like I said, I'm less dependent on it now than I was when I started. But even when I started, I was still writing everything myself. It was just giving feedback. But now I don't even need that feedback as much, I don't think. I'm still debating whether or not I'll use it. But yeah, it's a tool, guys. It's a tool. So that's I think that covers how I wrote this novel. Now I want to talk about the novel itself. Hmm. Or maybe I'll save that for another video because we're 20 minutes in. And it's my introductory video, so I don't want it to be too long. So yeah, I think I'll end it there, and then maybe the next video, so that I actually have content to record, I'll talk about what my novel actually is, explaining the narrative of my novel without spoiling anything major. So yes, let me know what you think in the comments. I hope somehow, some way, excuse me, this finds people. I've seen a lot of content creators, like writing content creators, who are finding success with their writing channels. So I'm hoping I'll find success with mine, God willing. We'll see. But yeah, let me know what you think in the comments. And yeah, see you in the next video.